Soul, making the mind question. Is what we see the truth, or is there something lurking behind the curtain? But the truth, as anyone who has delved into the depths knows, is that the most terrifying questions are not the ones we ask, but those that are asked of us without our consent. The year was 1875, and I, Dr. Victor Graves, found myself in the quiet coastal village of Brimstone Cove, Cornwall. It had been a year since my last break from the constant demands of my medical practice. The gentle sway of the sea and the mist hanging over the cliffs promised a solitude that was hard to come by. I arrived at the old inn, the Sea Breeze, where the landlord, a man named Thomas, greeted me with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. It was clear the villagers didn't see many outsiders, especially not one with a scientific mind like mine. "Good evening, Doctor," Thomas said, his voice low and hesitant. "We don't get many like you. You might find Brimstone a bit strange." "Strange?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "In what way?" He leaned in, his voice barely a whisper. "There are things in this village that are better left alone, especially the stone. The cursed stone." The next morning, after a fitful night's sleep, I ventured into the village. It was small, with narrow cobblestone streets and old, weathered buildings. There was a palpable stillness, as if time itself had slowed down. The locals spoke in hushed tones about a stone that had been placed on the cliffs centuries ago. It was said to be cursed, connected to the execution of a woman named Morrigan, a witch who had been put to death by the villagers long ago. "That stone," one villager told me, his voice trembling. "It marks the spot where she died, and it never lets go of the land. People who've gone near it, they've disappeared. Or worse, they end up drowned." I dismissed it as superstition, as I always did. There was no scientific evidence to suggest that a stone could cause deaths. Yet, as the day wore on, an unsettling feeling crept over me. Over the next few days, I began to hear whispers about a series of mysterious drownings that had plagued the village. No one knew the cause, but each incident seemed to be connected to the stone in some way. The most recent victim was a fisherman named Samuel, who had gone missing while out on his boat. His body was found days later, floating on the shore, his face frozen in an expression of terror. I visited the site where he had last been seen, near the cliffs. The wind howled through the rocks, and the sea crashed violently against the shore. In the distance, I saw it, the stone. It was large, rough-hewn, and seemed to hum with an unnatural energy. Something about it unsettled me, though I couldn't explain why. The villagers had begun to call it the witch's stone, but I couldn't help but think there was more to it than just superstition. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard something faint tapping against the window. I got up and opened it to find nothing but the thick, swirling fog that had begun to envelop the village. And then, I saw her. A figure stood on the cliffs, bathed in an eerie light. She wore a long, tattered gray dress, and her face was hidden in shadow. Her presence sent a chill down my spine, and as I stared, I felt an odd sense of both dread and curiosity. Before I could react, she disappeared into the mist. The next day, I visited the church, hoping to find answers from the priest. Father Colin was an older man, his face gaunt with exhaustion. He seemed to know more than he let on, but his fear was palpable. "They say the stone is the key," he muttered, his hands trembling as he gripped the Bible in his lap. "The witch, Morrigan. She was no ordinary woman. She made a pact with something ancient, something that still lives beneath the waves. He told me of an ancient ritual, one that Morrigan had attempted to summon dark forces to exact vengeance on the village. But it backfired. The stone, instead of being destroyed, became a vessel for her curse. And ever since, the village had been plagued by unnatural deaths. As the days passed, the village descended into chaos. People began to see the woman again, and those who did, like Samuel, were never seen alive again. Then, one evening, I visited the cliffs again, determined to uncover the truth. As I approached the stone, I felt an overwhelming sensation of being watched. The air was thick with something unnatural, and the sea roared in a way I had never heard before. And then she appeared again. Morrigan. Her face was a blur, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "You should have stayed away," she whispered, her voice like the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks. Before I could respond, the ground beneath me began to shake. The stone trembled, and I saw the ocean swell. In an instant, I was pulled into the waves. I awoke on the beach, my body cold and bruised. The villagers had found me and dragged me to safety, but the sea was still restless, and the fog never seemed to lift. I knew then that the curse of the stone had claimed yet another victim, and there was no escape from it. Morrigan's wrath was far from over. The witch's stone had not only taken lives, it had bound the village to her forever. I returned to London soon after, but the village of Brimstone Cove and its curse haunted me. I could not forget the face of Morrigan, nor the stone that bound her to the earth. Some curses, I've learned, are not meant to be understood. They are meant to be lived. And Brimstone Cove, for all its beauty, was a place where the past would never be forgotten.